That may be the greatest catch I've ever seen in my life.
Okay, let's go through. Let's look at every single wide receiver matchup this week. Try to figure out who exactly we should be putting in our starting lineup based on trends with their usage as well as the matchup itself. But of course, before we dive into it, you know what we have to do. We have to give away some Fantasy Flock Network hats here. And our first winner for a Fantasy Flock Network hat is going to be coming out for Jimmy. And then the other one's going to be Brandon. Thank y'all so much for supporting the channel. Really hope that y'all been enjoying the videos and live streams so far this season. If you win that Fantasy Flock Network hat, just make sure you email me ASAP with your physical address so I can get that hat out to you. And also make sure if you want to enter in to win your free Fantasy Flock Network hat, that you go down there, you drop a like on the video, subscribe to the channel, and leave a comment. We're giving away multiple free Fantasy Flock Network hats every single day this season. Also streaming every day this season, so make sure you're subscribed. And also make sure y'all go and sign up for Underdog Fantasy. When you sign up for Underdog Fantasy and make at least a $10 deposit, they match you dollar for dollar on that deposit up to $100 when you use promo code FLOCK. You can find the link in the description, find the link in the comment section. And when y'all go sign up for Underdog Fantasy, you'll see that they have a ton of cool player props you can check out. You can also get into some fantasy drafts with us on the live streams, or you can go get in some fantasy drafts with some random people, get in some best ball leagues. You can do 1 week drafts over there. And of course, we're going to be highlighting those player props as we go through and as we talk about these wide receivers for this video in particular, so you could have an idea of what props you may be looking at when you sign up for Underdog Fantasy. And of course, nothing supports this channel more. So thank you so much for everybody who's decided to support this channel with promo code FLOCK so far this season. And yeah, I think that should be it. Let's dive into it. Let's start it off with our first game with the New Orleans Saints and the Tennessee Titans. And I know, yes, A.J. Brown has a pretty tough matchup this week against Marshon Lattimore. And no, I do not care. You play A.J. Brown. If you're going through and looking at the ridiculous production we have had from A.J. Brown as of late, y'all know this was one of our favorite buy low candidates at the beginning of the season, that we had him over and over and over again in our buy low videos, as well as Keenan Allen, as well as Calvin Ridley. Of course, we're not going to go there, but nonetheless, with A.J. Brown, I know this past week, yeah, it wasn't great against the Rams and Jalen Ramsey. And yes, a lot of people saw A.J. Brown go out there and have a few crucial drops that were on third down that pretty much, I mean, he could have caught, but nonetheless, something that we talk about all the time in fantasy football is just the psychology of a fantasy football player and overreacting to drop passes by a wide receiver. The funniest thing ever is literally, if you want to go viral on Twitter, all you have to do is go, wide receiver X has not dropped a pass in 80 receptions. Like, who the hell cares? I hate to say this, but if you look at a macro sense, and I promise you, very, 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 very rarely are you able to look at previous drops from a wide receiver and say, are they predictive going forward? They are going to be an issue going forward. No, I would rather see the week that we just had from A.J. Brown, where he has 11 targets, 5 receptions, 42 receiving yards, and a couple drops. But I mean, he was able to generate 11 targets. That's what's important to me. It's important to me that A.J. Brown's able to get open to begin with, generate separation, draw the target. That is a talent that the wide receiver has, that A.J. Brown clearly is dominating the market share numbers in Tennessee. This is a player that we want to be betting on over and over and over and over again. I'm going to have him as a top 5 wide receiver in my rest of season rankings with no hesitation at all, really. Don't worry about the drops. Use them as a buy low opportunity. Yes, a tough matchup against Marshon Lattimore, but I mean, A.J. Brown almost just dunked on Jalen Ramsey a week ago. And now Julio Jones in this offense, while Julio definitely a player that needs to be on your roster, I think we at least have to see one solid week from Julio Jones before we go through and put him in our starting lineup. I mean, this is a wide receiver that so far this season, over the past 3 weeks, I mean, he's averaged about 4.5 targets a game. Now, yes, with Julio Jones, it's going to be very efficient on a per target basis, but we need to see the volume a little bit more before we go through and start him. Also a tough matchup against the New Orleans Saints. And in the case of New Orleans, I'm not starting anybody. I know that, yes, you have Trevor Siemian. Siemian's definitely a lot better than Taysom Hill for trying to find receiver production here, because we know Taysom Hill is going to be taking so much of that production in his own right in terms of how he's going to be vulturing those rushing touchdowns once they get into the red zone, as well as how to just, be a lower pocket passing quarterback to begin with. But nonetheless, I think with New Orleans, I know it's a great matchup against the Tennessee Titans. I don't necessarily know who we'd even start, though. I know a lot of people, are getting interested in Harris, and Harris has been fine over the past month or so. Like, if we're looking at this production right now, you actually have Deontay Harris as the number one wide receiver in New Orleans on a points per game basis, but still, he's giving you 9.5 points per game. This is not someone that I think that we should be betting on. He's had 31 targets, 2 touchdowns, 323 receiving yards, and 21 receptions so far this season. But that's through 7 weeks. He's averaging like 3 receptions a game. I'm going to be avoiding Deontay Harris. Now let's go over to our next game, which will be the Buffalo Bills and the New York Jets. I know that, trust me, I am right there with you. I want to get excited about Elijah Moore. I want to put Elijah Moore in our starting lineup. Y'all know how much we loved Elijah Moore this offseason from a dynasty fantasy football perspective. At the end of the day, I don't necessarily think that we can go through and play Elijah Moore. The issue is this is a wide receiver that, while yes, has the talent, the offense is going to be capping his upside severely. And at the same time, it's a tough matchup against the Buffalo Bills. Add on to this that while, yes, he was able to overcome a couple of these things last Thursday, now you're going to get Corey Davis back. Corey Davis has been practicing in full on Wednesday. Corey Davis, the reports are saying that he had no limitations at all in practice. Corey Davis coming back in, not saying that he'll be the wide receiver one over Elijah Mitchell. I think they'll each have a large role on this offense, but I think this offensive production overall is not going to be enough for us to really consider starting any New York Jets players in a very tough matchup against the Buffalo Bills. Now, in the case of Buffalo, you start Stephon Diggs, and with Diggs, I do not know what's happening. If you look at the role that he has had in Buffalo last season to this one, it has not changed much. I really want to say it has not really changed much at all. And at the end of the day, this offense is still almost as productive as they were last year. Every single week, they're the number one team, according to Las Vegas, in projected points scored. And as we've said time and time and time again, Las Vegas knows way more than I do. I promise you they know more than you do as well. Las Vegas knows more than every single person watching this video. So I think that we just continue to listen to them. They're telling us the Buffalo Bills are going to be putting up an insane amount of points. I'm not going to be hesitating. I think we go through and we play Stephon Diggs easily. Now, in regards to what we're doing with the other wide receivers, it's interesting because this is not necessarily a game that you expect Buffalo to have to throw the ball in the second half. I'd imagine that Buffalo wins this game single-handedly with Josh Allen and Stephon Diggs mainly. Now, the issue is, of course, you always get those spike weeks from Emmanuel Sanders. You get the spike weeks from Cole Beasley. But if you're looking at Emmanuel Sanders so far this season, you get some weeks. You get 26 fantasy points in week 3 against the Washington football team, 20 points against the Kansas City Chiefs in week 5. But you also have some duds along the way. 9 points against the Steelers, 6 points against the Dolphins, 0 points against the Dolphins. A very similar scenario with Cole Beasley, where Cole Beasley, you would assume that this is a wide receiver with a high floor and a low ceiling. No, it's almost the exact opposite. 14 points, 7 points, 20 points, 3 points, 1 point, 20 points, 20 points. It's just so hard to know when you're going to be starting these secondary options in Buffalo that I would try to avoid it in these games where Buffalo's not going to have to throw the ball with aggression in the second half. So I hate to say it. I think especially with Dawson Knox coming back, I'm not going to be that excited about either Beasley or Sanders. I think the only wide receiver we can start there is Diggs. Now, with the Detroit Lions and the Pittsburgh Steelers, you're going through and you're jamming in Deontay Johnson. You have to be so damn excited about Deontay Johnson in a plus matchup, especially with no Juju Smith-Schuster, no Chase Claypool. I know a lot of people have just been saying, okay, Mason, is Pat Freiermuth a tight end one now? Can we have Pat Freiermuth as a mid tight end one? While he is definitely a player that from a dynasty perspective, you are so damn excited about what you have. I think from a 2021 perspective, I understand the thought process. No Chase Claypool. You want to go in on one player in particular. That guy should be the young, exciting rookie at the tight end position that, has flashed definitely over the past month. He's been fantastic. You will most likely be getting Eric Ebron back. I'll say if Ebron's out again, of course, you jam in Pat Freiermuth, no question. If Ebron is back, I'd imagine Ebron is able to get 2 to 3 targets stolen away from Pat Freiermuth, where Freiermuth is maybe still going to be the tight end one, but maybe hovering around 5-6 targets instead. So we're essentially betting that he gets there with the touchdown. So it's an interesting case. I think that we start Deontay Johnson. You start Pat Freiermuth if you have no Eric Ebron. In the case of the Detroit Lions, we're not starting a single wide receiver. Tough matchup. I think we're going to be avoiding it. Now, our next matchup, the Indianapolis Colts playing the Jacksonville Jaguars. You jam in Michael Pittman. Michael Pittman has been fantastic over the past month. The box score doesn't even say it all with Michael Pittman because one of these weeks against the 49ers where he dropped 20 fantasy points, he was drawing deep downfield defensive pass interferences. So, I mean, honestly, that kind of skews the stats here a little bit where it shows that he only had 4 targets. But in reality, Carson Wentz looked his way more times than that. And here you had 105 receiving yards against the 49ers back in week 7. I mean, you had 30 points against the Tennessee Titans in week 8 where he drops multiple touchdowns off of 15 targets in this offense. Against the Jets, I mean, another receiving touchdown. This is a big-bodied wide receiver, 6'4", 220, so you'd naturally assume that he is someone that can have a touchdown rate higher than expectation, higher than league average, and he can sustain that over the long haul. Also, a great matchup against the Jacksonville Jaguars. Now, in the case of Jacksonville, I don't know if we can start anybody here. It's not the best matchup in the world against the Indianapolis Colts. I mean, with Indy in particular, they have had a good pass defense so far this season. And with Marvin Jones, it's been a wide receiver that's gotten you double-digit fantasy points once over the past 5 weeks now. Marvin Jones is, I mean, kind of who you expected him to be coming into the season. We're going to be looking up Laviska Shenault. Also, this is a wide receiver that, I mean, I liked Laviska coming into this season. I thought based on his athletic profile, based on the wide receiver that he was at Colorado, if Trevor Lawrence came in and elevated this overall offense, Laviska Shenault would have been a great option, especially once you had the Travis Etienne injury. But I mean, with Laviska, I mean, you've had some very disappointing performances this year. 1 fantasy points, 8, 6, 4, 6. I mean, his best week this entire season was against the Bengals in week 4, where he dropped 17 fantasy points with 7 targets, 99 receiving yards, and 6 receptions. I think with Laviska, I mean, he is maybe behind Jamal Agnew now. I hate to say it. Jamal Agnew, obviously not a player that I was expecting to be anything coming into the year. However, Jamal Agnew over the past month, I mean, this is a wide receiver that's had 30 targets over the past 4 games. So he's up there averaging about 7.5 targets a game. Now keep in mind, smaller wide receiver, no real pedigree. This is not going to be someone that has a high touchdown rate by any means. But nonetheless, he's been more consistent than these other options over the past 3 weeks. But still, I think we don't necessarily want to be playing any of these Jacksonville Jaguars wide receivers. We would probably just be looking to only play Michael Pittman in that matchup. Now, going over to the Tampa Bay Buccaneers and the Washington football team, you play Terry McLaurin. Honestly, I think we can play Logan Thomas coming back from this injury as well. I mean, with Tampa, of course, they have a very good defense overall. They have a better run defense than they have a pass defense, and Tampa is favored by multiple touchdowns in this game. So you know that Washington's going to be looking to throw the ball in the second half. And in the case of the wide receivers here for the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, I mean, you play pretty much every single player that's healthy. If Godwin is good to go, we're going to be going and playing Chris Godwin. Now, I will say, he missed practice on Thursday. So it may look like we're having to go through and monitor what we have with Chris Godwin going forward. Y'all know with Chris Godwin, we'll be able to give you updates in our live streams every single night. We have live streamed every single day for over, I don't even want to know how long now. It's embarrassing how much we have live streamed. But yeah, come out to a live stream any single night. We'll be able to give updates on Chris Godwin, where he stands this week. Looks like you're maybe going to be without him. So if we have no Antonio Brown, if we have no Chris Godwin, I mean, with Rob Gronkowski right now, it doesn't really look like Gronk is trending in a positive direction. If we're pulling up the most recent report that we have for Rob Gronkowski here. So Rob Gronkowski back works with trainers during Tampa's Thursday practice. So yeah, I mean, if this is another player missing practice, fire the hell up Mike Evans. And I know a lot of people were getting excited about Tyler Johnson a few weeks ago when you had Antonio Brown initially ruled out of this game. Now, with Tyler Johnson, I mean, this is someone that didn't necessarily jump up into that role you expected him to have. Now, I will say, if you also remove Chris Godwin away from this situation, maybe all of a sudden that is a scenario where you can look to play Tyler Johnson. The week before the bye, he actually had 6 targets, 65 receiving yards, and 5 receptions with no Antonio Brown here. It's a very nice matchup against the Washington football team as well. So if you're desperate and you miss out on someone like Chris Godwin, I think that while I was telling everybody to bench Tyler Johnson earlier in the season when people wanted to get a little too excited, if you're missing out from both Antonio Brown and Chris Godwin, fire up Tyler Johnson because we know there will be volume in this offense. Let's go over to our next matchup, which will be the Cleveland Browns and the New England Patriots. I know a lot of people want to get really excited about Donovan Peoples-Jones. I get it. Donovan Peoples-Jones, he was the #1 high school recruit coming back in 2017. So from a Devy fantasy football perspective, if you were playing in those deep dynasty leagues, I mean, Donovan Peoples-Jones has been on the radar for a very long time now. I mean, he goes out in that 2020 draft class, posts a ridiculous mark with pretty much every single combine drill. It shows that he has that elite athleticism. He has the prototypical size. Now, he goes in the 6th round of the NFL draft in 2020. He is a wide receiver that has shown flashes so far this season, but not necessarily anybody that's given us that consistent production. With Donovan Peoples-Jones, he has had 18 18 targets this season. Yes, he gets the deep ball a week ago, but please, for the love of God, do not start Donovan Peoples-Jones. As we also said a week ago, I'm really not going to be starting Jarvis Landry either. I just think that with this Cleveland Browns passing offense, we need to be avoiding everybody we can. This is not a regular offense. I think that picking the productive wide receivers on a week-to-week basis is going to be a very tall task. And in the case of the New England Patriots, I was probably telling people to start Jacoby Myers way longer than I should have been. I mean, with Jacoby Myers, this was a wide receiver in the first month of the season. He was coming out and he was averaging 10 targets a game. I was very surprised to see the Jacoby Myers workload where he had 9 targets, 6 targets, 14 targets, 12 targets to open up the first month of the season. He looks like he's had a completely different role over the past month, however, where, he has given us one double-digit performance in the past 5 weeks. Myers isn't someone we can play either. It's a tough matchup. I'm going to be expecting this to be a lower scoring game in general. Okay, so now our next matchup will be the Atlanta Falcons and the Dallas Cowboys. With Atlanta, Cordell Patterson is the wide receiver that you want, obviously, playing at the running back position. With Dallas, you fire the hell up CeeDee Lamb, fire up Amari Cooper. Gallup, intriguing because the matchup. I'm not going to be playing Gallup this week, however. I think Gallup's fantastic in the long term. With this matchup in particular, Russell Gage did get a bump up this past week. It looked like maybe 2 weeks ago when I was so wrong telling everybody to play Russell Gage. Maybe Gage was actually dealing with a slight injury that we weren't necessarily fully aware of. Kyle Pitts, this is going to be the Kyle Pitts breakout. I want to be on the record because y'all know I wasn't a massive fan of Kyle Pitts coming into this season. Whenever you could have gotten TJ Hawkinson and Mark Andrews in round 6 and Kyle Pitts was going in round 4, I was laughing at that draft price, saying it was one of the worst draft prices in fantasy. At this point, when you have no Calvin Ridley, when you have such a locked-in role for Kyle Pitts in this offense, fire up Kyle Pitts. He's a top 3 tight end. I think you have to be all about him. Maybe you make the argument he's tight end 4 behind George Kittle now. Nonetheless, this past week, tough matchup against Marshawn Lattimore. I think it's going to be the breakout that you've been waiting for against the Dallas Cowboys. Do not be surprised when Kyle Pitts goes over 100 receiving yards this week. Now, our next game's going to be the Carolina Panthers and the Arizona Cardinals. We're with Carolina. They just signed Cam Newton. Okay, so I didn't make a video about this or anything because I don't think it's that big of a deal. I don't think Cam Newton's that big of an upgrade over whoever else they would have had, PJ Walker. I think at this point, if you're going to be looking at Cam Newton, this is a quarterback that's going to be very limited. Clearly we see that this New England Patriots team is willing to just completely move off of him before the season even starts. I think that we can start DJ Moore. It's a tough matchup as well against the Arizona Cardinals. And the case with Arizona, what sucks is I can't really give you any updates right now because, we don't really know what we can expect with Kyler. We don't know what we can expect with Hopkins. Neither of them practiced on Thursday. So we're honestly just going to have to wait because we don't even know if Cam Newton's going to play on Sunday. I would be surprised, honestly, if he plays as soon as he signs with this team. So if anything, please just come out to the live streams on Friday, on Saturday, on Sunday morning. That way we can talk about this situation a little bit more when we know, because I'll tell you, if DeAndre Hopkins does not play, fire up Christian Kirk. Now, our next matchup will be the Minnesota Vikings and the Los Angeles Chargers. You play Keenan Allen, and I know Mike Williams has been so damn disappointing. And Mike Williams, he was our lock of the week last week on Underdog Fantasy at 58.5 receiving yards. We were taking the over. I was so happy with that line. He gets to 58 yards in the third quarter and doesn't get another reception, which kills me. I'll tell you that. Nonetheless, maybe we're doing it again. Maybe it's a little too late, but I think with all the injuries that we have had at the wide receiver position, I think we can go back to the Mike Williams well, seeing the ceiling that we had at the beginning part of the season. Hopefully, the usage we have had over the past few weeks has been more so scheme dependent rather than what we actually had with Mike Williams and what's going to be predictive going forward. Because they were using him more so as that deep wide receiver, that player that's not going to be a target hog as we have seen essentially throughout his entire NFL career, except at the beginning part of the season. Then they were using him as the prototypical alpha X wide receiver. Hopefully we get him used a little bit more like an alpha, a little bit less like a field stretcher this week. I think we start Mike Williams, we start Keenan Allen. I'm going to be starting both Minnesota players as well, even though this Chargers passing defense is pretty damn good, and their rushing defense obviously is what we want to be attacking. Now our next matchup, you have the Seattle Seahawks and the Green Bay Packers. Don't know if Aaron Rodgers is going to be good to go this week. I think at this point, you say you're starting Davante Adams regardless, because while yes, Jordan Love looked horrible, I will definitely admit that, and trust me, I have Jordan Love on a lot of Dynasty Superflex teams. I hate to see Jordan Love going out there and being that disappointing. Nonetheless, he force-fed Davante Adams. Davante Adams had 14 targets in that game. You start Davante Adams regardless. In the case of Seattle, you're starting DK Metcalf. I think with Tyler Lockett, assuming that we have Russell Wilson good to go, we're going to be starting Tyler Lockett. I mean, obviously, these were two players that I was just too damn low on as well. Whenever we had Geno Smith coming in, I said we didn't want anything to do with either DK Metcalf or Lockett. And the last week we had from Seattle, Geno Smith had 195 passing yards, and Tyler Lockett and DK Metcalf combined for 185, something I've never seen before. And it looks like Russell Wilson's going to be 100% good to go. I mean, he's practicing without limitations right now, so I think you fire up both Seattle Seahawks players. Now, our next game will be the Philadelphia Eagles and the Denver Broncos. You play Dallas Goedert. I'm definitely going to put that out there. Goddard seeing his career high in snap rate. He's also at the very top of this team in target share on a week-to-week basis. Smith, however, I like him in the long term, especially for the fantasy football playoffs. This week in a tough matchup against the Denver Broncos, where this Broncos defense just shut down Dallas, probably going to be avoiding that play. And in the case of Denver, y'all know last week I was screaming, start Jerry Jeudy, start Jerry Jeudy, start Jerry Jeudy. He's the wide receiver one in this offense. No Noah Fant. We want Jerry Jeudy everywhere we can. Well, you're getting Noah Fant back this week. I don't know if we can be that excited about Jeudy. I mean, as we've said over the past month now, Jeudy will be the wide receiver one here. You can't start Courtland Sutton. Please, please, please. I mean, I can't even beg you now. I hope that you did it a month ago. I hope you already sold Noah Fant. I hope you already sold Courtland Sutton before we got Jerry Jeudy back in here. Jeudy is the wide receiver one. He would be my favorite player to start in this matchup. But I think that it's probably not a spot that we love with Noah Fant coming back. I would kind of like to see one more week. Now, our next game is going to be the Kansas City Chiefs and the Las Vegas Raiders. Yes, this Chiefs offense is the talk of the year based on the fact that they're nothing like what we had in 2018, 2019, or 2020. With that being said, Tyreek Hill is still the wide receiver 3 on a points per game basis so far this season. That is how dominant Tyreek Hill is. Even if this offense is going to be horrible, he's still a high-end wide receiver 1 that you start on a week-to-week basis. Mecole Hardman cannot catch anything. Like, I have no idea. I mean, like how we were talking about previously, maybe I'm letting the drops get a little bit too much to my head with Mecole Hardman here, but he looks so damn bad. With Las Vegas, I mean, you had Hunter Renfrow with the best week he's had so far the second best week so far he's had this season this past week. I mean, if you're looking at the receiving yards, however, it was just right in line with what we've had all year. He gets there because he gets the receiving touchdown and he gets that target in the red zone. Hopefully you still have that red zone role for Hunter Renfrow. I would be fine starting Renfrow for Las Vegas. I wouldn't be that excited about it though. Now our last matchup, you have the Los Angeles Rams and the San Francisco 49ers. And here with the Rams, I mean, this is an offense that you play Cooper Kupp as the wide receiver 1, averaging 26 fantasy points per game. I mean, he had a horrible game this past week. I mean, Cooper Kupp only had about 20 fantasy points. He didn't even get to 100 receiving yards. Boo freaking who. Obviously, Cooper Kupp's the wide receiver 1. I think based on all the injuries that we've had at the wide receiver position, you probably have to start Robert Woods. And honestly, I think Van Jefferson could be an appealing play as well, just given the fact that with Van Jefferson, this is going to be a very productive passing offense overall. And with Van Jefferson, this has been a wide receiver that's playing every single snap, running a route on every single Matthew Stafford dropback. All they're having is 11 personnel there. And with San Francisco, tough matchup against Los Angeles. I'm probably not going to be playing Brandon Ayuk. I know that's what people want to hear. You play Deebo Samuel, you play George Kittle. With Brandon Ayuk, I think if we could avoid it, it'd be fantastic. I know that he was a wide receiver that's been great over the past 2 weeks if you're looking at him just changing his role in this offense. But at the end of the day, he's still like the wide receiver 81 on a points per game basis this year. So if we just take a step back, if we look at what we've had throughout the entire season with the larger sample, I think it'd be very hard to just completely forget what we had through the first 8 weeks with Brandon Ayuk to just all of a sudden assume that he's a plug and play guy for us because we liked him coming into the season. Now, thank you, of course, for checking out the video. I really hope that y'all enjoyed it. I really hope y'all go down there, drop that like, leave a comment, enter in to win a free Fantasy Flock Network hat. And of course, go sign up for Underdog Fantasy. Use promo code FLOCK when you sign up. They'll match your first deposit dollar for dollar up to $100 when you use promo code FLOCK. Probably saw a lot of the player props on this video. You can go get in a draft. You can go look at some of those player props for yourself. And yeah, nothing supports this channel more. You can find that link in the live chat. Find it in the description of the video. Yeah, thank you again. Hope you have a great day, and I hope we see you with the live stream tonight.